Welcome to Shield and Haven. I'm Colin, and the idea for what we're going to do today is called Coffee with Colin. This started from one of my buddies at work. Shout out to you, Mike. And he would come to my office and we would kind of hang out and just talk about the things, whatever the things were, over some coffee. And when he found out I was retiring and that we were hitting the road, he said, you know what you should do? You should do a segment and call it Coffee with Colin. And I was like, I kind of like that. So we're going to give it a shot. Maybe it'll be a series, maybe it'll be a thing. I figured it only right that what we would do in this first episode is talk to my wife, Bonnye. Hi, Bonnye.
Hi, Colin. Happy to be here.
You look nice today.
Thank you.
You look nice every day.
Oh.
She calls that a backhanded compliment when I say something like, you look nice today. She's like, oh, because I don't look nice the other days?
Sometimes.
You look nice all the time.
Oh, thank you, so do you.
Really nice. I digress. So here's my thought for how this is going to run. If you have any other ideas or things you want to see, obviously like, comment, and subscribe, and put any comments below. The event today, hopefully right now, it'll be cutting to a still shot that I took. I'm still learning the editing, and you'll be able to see the coffee, but it's called Barissimo, German roasted. Got it from Aldi, of all places, because we were just out celebrating our anniversary. It's a low acidity coffee, and it's very good. I like it a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. I typically take my coffee with a little bit of milk, maybe some goat milk.
It's actually raw milk in there from our friend's farm. Before we hit the road, we're partaking in more raw milk.
It's quite good. And a little bit of honey. That's one of the benefits of beekeeping, is honey. And we use honey to sweeten. We don't use sugars or stuff like that anymore if we can avoid it. I take mine just with a little bit of honey. How do you take yours?
Honey and then raw milk.
Way more raw milk than mine.
It's got to be a certain color.
Hers is mostly milk and a little bit of coffee.
I would go with that. I'd say that's affirmative.
Lately, you've been adding something else to our coffees. What is it?
I have been adding cayenne pepper and cinnamon, a little Mexican flavor for you, but cayenne pepper has amazing healing properties. So it actually helps you to sleep better. Your blood will become more powerful and do what it's supposed to do as the cayenne moves through you and repairs things that are amiss, if you will.
What my thought is for this segment is that maybe there'll be places I could interview people along the way, whether it's...
That'd be cool.
Whatever it is. Other people, other cops, retired cops, or people who have done the homesteading life. Just things that are interesting. So you're wearing your Farms vs. Pharma shirt that I just got you.
Yes, I am. We are a big fan of local homegrown farms and big supporters of people in the homesteading movement who are wanting to seek a healthier lifestyle for themselves and their family and get away from being over-medicated in our sick care system. We want to help support people that are moving to the well care system, which we believe starts right in your home.
That's right.
Yep. It's a solid t-shirt to start that whole process with.
First question, I'm trying not to make it too long, but first question for you is, there's lots of interviews, lots of things that are done, lots of discussions with cops and the difficulties of the job. I think now a couple weeks out of a week and a half, almost 2 weeks out of the job, we can look back and see how it's been. It has been a real challenge for me, but tell me about it from a spouse's perspective. What would you say to someone else who is married to someone considering law enforcement or something along those lines?
Well, it's a great question. And
thanks, Bonnye.
You're welcome, Colin. We have had the particular privilege of serving on the wellness team for our department for the last 2 years. And I've had lots of training and lots of talk time, spouses academies, and spouse retreats where I've been able to kind of flesh out that question to make it a palatable answer, I think, after having hundreds of discussions literally over the last 2 years. And really, I think the concerns for the wives and the husbands and the spouses and the kids is not so much that when you walk out the door, we fear that you won't come back. I think that's something that we know we're signing up for. That's a risk inherently of the job. I think it's when we do have an officer involved shooting and it becomes real for us. For us as a family, we've had the privilege, the express privilege of serving alongside 3 widows. And I think there is some guilt that comes with that for me personally. That has been something I did not, survivor's guilt. That is not something.
Elaborate on that guilt for.
Because you keep coming home, but their officer doesn't. I think women and men can experience that even if they're not serving alongside widows. I just had the privilege of being able to experience that, and also the surprise of I knew you when you were in training. You came home and shared with me everything. This is an officer that shares all the things. So that's a good thing for me because it put me at ease. I never watched him walk out the door and thought, oh my gosh, tear, he's never gonna come home. Colin's training was excellent. He was not someone that I worried about when he went to work. I knew that he knew what he was doing. And I think it wasn't until later after we had children and he was, I couldn't get a hold of him. We had just had our son. And I turned on the TV at the prompting of another wife and saw him breaking down the doors to hunt a bad guy that had just killed 2 of our officers. In Colin's tenure, we lost 5 officers. Of those 5, 3 of them, we were called to come alongside them. So that's 20 years, and it's a drop in the bucket compared to the military. But I think comparison is something that we really don't want to do a whole lot when it comes to military, when it comes to the law enforcement life, because they're 2 very different beasts, very similar. But I have some wonderful military wives, and law enforcement was great. He was here, he was in the house, and he was making great money eventually. We went to 1 income, and I mean, what they're making now to start is really good. And I think it's well worth it, considering that they put their lives on the line. Being a spouse is, I think the schedule in so many ways is probably the most challenging because you are actually physically in a world that is on a Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a weekend, 9 to 5. So as an adult without children, no big deal. If we had kids, we were on schedules and we were operating to support the family, that's when it really became challenging. We had a wonderful support system, but when I would show up to a gathering, it was, "Where's Colin?" And so I just started joking that was my new name, like, where's Colin? I mean, obviously, if he's not with me, he's at work. It wasn't...
Because other people don't grasp the fact. It's not easier. I've not been in the military, so I can't speak from the military perspective, but at least you families that do deal with military, it tends to be a deployment. You're gone for a long period of time and the person's always gone.
Right.
Whereas
this is true.
Whereas in law enforcement, it's my particular schedule. Our department was 4 days on, 4 days off. So if you're working a late schedule or something like that, it's the build up to the hours, and then so it's maybe he's working, maybe he's not. It becomes really hard to plan. I could plan our life very well. We could plan our life very well.
Yeah.
Like we could look ahead and know 2 months from now if I was working on a Friday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
Whereas with military families or other families, it doesn't know. It's dependent. Same with firefighters. Firefighters are like 24 on, 48 off.
Working their Kelly shifts too.
And so they're either there or they're not. But it's a little more similar. But they deal with different issues. That's a whole other topic that we'll address.
We would love to get into with some other families.
Ultimately, what would be your ultimate advice? Maybe.
I would say communication, to really lean hard into communicating and learning a different way to do that, and prioritizing this. Because the world, what I've learned at the end of 20 years, is the world is going to continue to swirl. There's going to be busy. You're not going to be able to avoid the busy. You're going to try. Trust us. We know. And there's going to be times when you can do it, unplug unapologetically. But my best advice would be to prioritize getting your officer and your kids out of the city, even if it's an hour away, to unplug and reconnect frequently. We prioritized, we called it staycations because when we were on 1 income, it was not really viable. We just ate out less. We bought less things on Amazon or at the store, And we saved up for the year, and we had a week vacation. And it was a staycation because we could not afford to fly. We couldn't afford to go far and prioritize time together and time with the kids, because you don't get those years back. That's the thing that we've learned. And I'm grateful that I was able to stay home.
The years with the kids.
Yeah, we don't get to get those years. And we don't get to get the years when we're young and enthusiastic about life and doing the things back together. Something you can count on in law enforcement is change. And cops hate change. But you know what? Cops are people. And people.
What they hate more is when things stay the same.
It's true.
That's the joke.
It's
if you're
so
a cop,
true.
You know.
So when you start to embrace that and you just start to realize it's going to change, and we're going to be in a constant flux in our family of shift work and schedule changes, and oh no, there's also going to be trauma that's sprinkled in there and injuries. We have his retirement party, and one of the questions for trivia for Colin is how many times did he receive a job-related injury and get hospitalized or need medical treatment? And in 20 years,
don't give the answer, because what if this hasn't played yet?
And in 20 years, it's not going to play before then. Five times. So looking at that, he didn't get on a job-related shooting. He wasn't shot. There's a lot of thank God, there's a lot of really positive things in his career. But when you are in the middle of it and you're getting 65% of your paycheck on workman's comp, it's a big giant in your life. So the best thing you can do is continue to stay grounded and rooted together and be a team. And you have to learn how to communicate to do that. Both of us came from team sports, and we still really stunk at it in our marriage through certain seasons. It was marriage that was really a difficult language. So I would say prioritize your relationship. We had one speaker, Kevin Gilmartin. We're probably going to plug his book on here because it's a really good one.
Ooh.
It's a good read, and his advice was, well, make your officer go on a date. Obviously, that's not always something that we can do, but as a spouse, I can tell you that an encouragement to date once a month to start with, and then once you realize how great that is, try to move to twice a month. Try to move to once a week or every other week, and make it so that it's not a guilt thing. If you don't make it because life got in the way and the schedule was hard, totally understand. Sometimes our dates consisted of putting the kids down, Colin running out and getting takeout, or me making a nice meal.
We actually made that became our Valentine's tradition. We did it one year, ran out and got bang bang shrimp from
wherever. It was delicious.
Forget the place that makes it.
And we didn't have to make reservations or get dressed up or overpay for the
It just
meal.
happened to be that's how it worked out that year, was to run out and get takeout. So I got the takeout, brought it back. While I was gone, she put some candles on the table, put the kids to bed, and we didn't get dressed up. We didn't have to wait in line, and we just had a really nice dinner together at home. And from then on, that's what we did every time we had something like that. We found it way more enjoyable to do it that way.
And prioritizing that is hard. It's hard. You know, the spouse, you're raising the kids, and you feel like a single parent sometimes, and that's okay. We can say that out loud. You're not. But you can have those feelings. And so just to remember that feelings don't have to dictate your life. Don't get stuck in your feelings. It's okay to not be okay, but don't stay there.
But you said prioritizing that. By that, you mean?
Prioritizing being together and talking to your officer. And I know you want them to understand what you're going through, but they may not. And I know they want you to understand what they're going through, but you may not. And letting that be okay in your relationship. And going, I can still empathize with you because I am in it with you. Also, don't separate yourself from them. They're not the ones serving and you're not serving. Remember, cohesively as a family unit, you're all together serving. That's important for your officer to remember as well. If they don't have a place to come home to that's safe and that's taken care of, their job gets exponentially harder. So part of our job is to make sure that home environment is not one of chaos 24/7. It's gonna be chaotic sometimes, okay? You got toddlers running around, you got a baby screaming, you've got teenagers coming in and out. Those things can be chaotic, and your officer has to understand there are going to be times in the home when it's loud, and they may not prefer that, but that's called preference. And so we've had a lot of communication over the years of, I'm gonna do my best to make sure that it's calm, but realistically, we're not gonna shush our children a million times. because that's not fair to them either. So what can we do? Can I take them to the park while you're sleeping? I'm going to go do that. Is it an inconvenience for me? Yeah. Is it worth it so he can sleep and be well rested on the job? Yeah. So there's a lot of everybody's giving of themselves in this whole thing. And we have a lot of those conversations. I'm happy to answer more questions from my perspective. It's not the only perspective. It's just that we've had the incredible opportunity to connect with officers and their spouses from all over the country. And we don't know it all. And we just have the experience. And that's been really, really, really beneficial to us. So
if you have questions and you feel comfortable putting them in the comments, do it. If not, you want to send us a message, by all means, please do.
Absolutely.
And she'll get back to you. Okay, so that was your advice for
right now.
People starting out.
Yeah.
What about, now we'll talk about middle of the career, end of the career. So middle of the career, that was a big challenge for us.
I think middle is the hardest. I think middle is definitely the hardest. It is
Why?
So everybody's dialed in, like you're going to be gone, shift work is happening, the kids are older. So their activities start to change. I thought that the beginning was the hardest because of the babies and the toddler phase, but really that's easy. Here's your snack trap, here's your nap. Like that's easy. They need to be managed, and there's not big emotions yet. Once you start to hit that middle of the career, your kids are growing too. So it's not just that your officer has grown in their career. Maybe you're growing, maybe you have a career. Maybe you're not stay at home. Middle of the road, very hard. You've got bigger emotions with your officer. They now have a couple years on, and I think the hardest part as a spouse is now there's PTSD that's layered in there. So whether they've been in a shooting or not doesn't matter. They're showing up to calls at this point and they have years under their belt and they probably haven't dealt with it. They probably don't know how to deal with it. And showing up to everybody's worst day of their life, right, is rough. It's taking its toll. Probably off duty is in a full swing by now, and you want to go on that vacation, right? We told you to go on a vacation once a year. Well, I got to go pick up the off duty. So boundaries have become really important without using them against each other, right? Because you want to have healthy boundaries, not toxic ones. You want to spend quality time a lot with your person. The boundary is, hey, I see your schedule this week. I want to make time for you. What works for you? And that's a two-way street. So I think middle of the career is definitely by far, you are in it, you're in the trenches. They don't know what's going on with their mental health. You don't know what's going on with your mental health, because as they start to kind of get under the weight of the badge, we like to call it, we're not really sure about what's going on with our person, because they're not the person they were at the beginning of their career, right? And all of a sudden, bitterness can start to set in. So we hit that stall. I like to call it a stall, and a reevaluation of what's important to us. And is marriage a contract or is it a covenant? And so we really had to dig our heels into, no, we made this promise to each other, and till death do us part. And these were vows that we made before God, and we take those really seriously. And we struggled. There was a huge separation for us. Like, we physically separated out of the home.
And that was a lot of that was due to me and what I was doing. Like, I was still partying like I was a college kid.
Your identity was wrapped up in your badge too.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Cops work hard and we party hard. Yeah. And so I was all in on that culture, because that's what I did. But we had not allowed God into our relationship at that point. Yeah. And so things really had fallen apart. I was at a point at 37 years old where I was still so focused on the job. I had gone out for and made the SWAT tryout day, which was probably the most difficult thing I've done physically. I've participated in college sports. I've done lots of physically challenging things, but the SWAT tryout day, golly, that was beautiful. That was brutal.
I thought you were going to say beautiful. I was like,
I think I almost did. But brutal.
I was probably
doing 2-a-days and doing all this kind of crazy stuff. So the job had really come to the front and center of the focus for me. So kudos to you for standing up in the middle of that, where I had literally, it was waking up from a blackout drunk night, and there was a Dear John letter, although Dear Colin, and my wife and kids were gone, and it was terrifying. But she had the courage to say, no, this is enough, and draw that boundary.
That's hard.
But she was also willing to say,
I'm willing to work on it.
Yeah. And we did.
And that's the thing. And
Jesus stepped in, and we're, thank
it's
God,
a two-way street.
here we are 11 years later.
Yeah.
Better on the back end.
100%.
So maybe some advice for middle of the career would be, where are you at with your faith?
Yeah, where are you at with your faith? But are you talking to people that are toxic? Are you sharing what you're going through with anyone? We found a Christian counselor, and he really helped. You know, sometimes you just need somebody in the middle of you to blow the whistle and say, you be quiet, you listen. You be quiet, right? Now you listen. And that was really beneficial. We're both pretty type A. I was an assistant principal at the time, and it was rough because we were working and we had young children, young children, like toddler and 5 years old. And that was double income, you know, going in two different directions. So it's interesting because we've done double income and going crazy different directions, and then staying home again, me staying home and him working. So,
and we've talked about that with a lot of officers. Yeah. It's doable. It just takes a lifestyle change.
Yeah, we went down to one car. He had his patrol car he would take home. But when he was off, we had one car, and that was a big sacrifice. We went from a 2,000 square foot home to a 1,200 square foot home. Like, all of our living spaces were kind of the same, but the sacrifice that we found for our family on the back end of that was exponential, because as you can hear, it was falling apart. It was unraveling. It was not something that we wanted or signed up for, but the badge had a lot to do with that. And the identity and the stress. Stress is a silent killer. Even on the back end of this career, we are both still in transition from years of exhaustion, years of hypervigilance, because when he's on midnights, guess who's in charge of the home? Whether I realize it subconsciously or not, I'm every little bump in the night when he's not home, I'm awake. You know, our son was sleepwalking for years, and you're always hypervigilant even as a spouse in this career. You don't realize you've signed up for that until, you know, you're in it and you're going, why am I so stressed? Why are my cortisol levels? I work out all the time. Why is this belly fat not going away? Well, we have different levels of stress than the rest of the world. So to try and relate to your friend who has, you know, a very important job, her husband is, you know, in a cubicle or going to an office, those are not less, but they're very different. And for them to say the copier didn't work, or the TPS report didn't get done, or they're having a conflict with, you know, another employee, for those people, that's their worst day. Mm-hmm. For us, our perspective is different. We're like, are you serious? Your person was home at 6 instead of 5 p.m.? I feel so bad for you, right? So you have to be careful of that bitterness. You have to be careful of covetousness, being jealous of that.
For the purpose of time, let's talk now end of the career. What would you have to say for spouses at the end of the career?
Start transitioning 3 to 5 years ahead. Go to the boring meetings with him. Go to the deferred comp meeting.
Yeah, the financial planning meetings.
Do it.
Do
it 3 years ahead of when he leaves. You won't remember a thing. That's okay. You're going to learn in layers. Go then the last year that he's there or she's there, go with them.
Maybe even go before that.
So I said go first time with them 3 years, and then in their last year, go again. Because you guys need to look at those numbers. You need to see this as possible, and you need to see that it's time for it to end. 20 years, we learned in a wellness program, is the max for a cop, should be.
It really should be. There is the ability to stay later. I could have stayed 30. There's guys that stay 30, 35 years, but we didn't want that. We didn't want that to be the case for us. So praise God, we're able to be done at 20. Does that mean I'm done working forever? I don't know. It's just going to look different.
No.
It's going to look different.
He's retired from police work. We don't stop. Like,
hopefully we'll do a family business. Maybe it'll involve like tractoring or something like that. I don't know. But we were willing and able to. I stopped working extra duty there just to see let's see what checks look like at the end.
It was
extra
great for
money.
our budget. Yeah, and our time together. You want to stop the grind. And ladies, you want to hang in there, and men, hang in there and be steadfast, because sometimes it takes them a little bit longer, and sometimes they don't listen to you. They have to listen to their beautiful daughter or the other voices in their life that are telling them.
Ava was the one that, Bonnye had said for a long time that I should be done at 20. But then as we got to the point where we were going
Yeah.
to other people's retirement parties,
Shout out to the Shepherds and Harrises. Thank you.
my daughter at the end of one of them goes, "Daddy, when can you retire?" And I was like, well, I mean, technically I'm old enough by statute to retire now, but I've got a year and some change left till I finish 20. I feel like 20 is at least what I should do. But then there's something called the drop, and I could make a lot of extra money in the drop. And so they were like, what's the drop? Led to a big family meeting, and essentially what it is the extra pot of money at the end. And what she asked was, do we need that money? And Bonnye looked at me like, the wife looked like yeah, honey, do we need that money? Because it was a question she had asked. And the answer is no, you don't need it. It doesn't matter, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up? And in my discussions with people for leaving early, leaving at 20, the reasons why they don't is insurance is the number one, which farms to pharma. There's a lot you can do with your diet, which is what she's been integral in our home in doing, which could be a whole other segment in and of itself, diet. But it was insurance, or that's the only reason I wouldn't. Other than that, I'd be gone. 9 times out of 10, that was the answer. Or when we shared what we're doing about traveling, it was, I wish I could do that, but it's too late. It's my kids are gone, or we're divorced, or whatever, or I don't know if I could do that. You just got to be willing to look outside the box.
Yeah.
So the end of the career advice would be to plan.
Planning will get you further than you think it will. It'll involve everybody. You have stakeholders in your home, and sometimes they're little tiny stakeholders, and sometimes they're big ones. Leap of faith into that, and prioritizing family time and conversations.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much that our kids don't hear about, and it's always tailored to their age, but it helps to raise adults. We're raising godly adults, and what we want them to hear and to see is that they don't have to be perfect. This life isn't going to be perfect, but what it can be is unified together, prioritizing. And for us, it's God and family and friends and community.
So give me advice, best advice, beginning, middle, end, considering all those things. What I've heard you say are things like communication, planning, budgeting,
Yep.
diet,
Yep. Health and wellness, both mental and physical, is a big deal. I think would be my biggest advice for people.
If I'm putting bullet points at the bottom of this video that say,
self-care
here's your
selfish.
top 5 things, advice from a spouse to another first responder spouse, that is what?
Prioritize community. Make sure you have people outside of your immediate community that are in law enforcement. Make sure you have a variety of people.
And that might take doing it yourself. Kudos to her and a couple of other wives. If it's not there, don't just look at it and go, oh my gosh, it's not there.
Right.
Maybe you got to be the one to start it.
Right.
Start that community and reach out.
Okay,
so community?
Yeah, faith. You have to put your faith
Amen.
in something that's bigger than yourselves, and something that's bigger than the department at large, because the department, it's not their job to relieve your stress.
Yeah.
It's not their job. Some departments do it better than others, but don't look to them to transition you into retirement.
Ultimately, the department's a machine, and the machine's going to keep running, whether I'm there or not. Then 3?
So I would say, and then 3 is going to be wellness overall. It's going to be prioritizing your wellness mentally and physically. Nobody's going to do it. If you are a broke down machine by the time your husband gets home or your wife gets home, you're no good to them or anybody else. Don't be a martyr. Be somebody who prioritizes health and wellness for you and your family.
Can I jump in and say I think 4 is communication?
I would say communication. Yep, big time. Between your children and your spouse. Don't ever talk poorly about your spouse to your children. Keep that into yourself, and then share that with somebody in your community that you really believe you can trust with that information.
And then the final thing?
I would say overarching is your faith. It's going to be...
You already said faith.
I thought I said community first.
Said faith.
We're going to circle back to faith again.
Faith
because
again. I'm down with that.
That's really what the Velcro is.
Yeah.
So for us, it's God and Jesus Christ. For you, that might look like something different. But if you don't have anything tangible to put your hope and your faith and your energies into to help you, then you will fall apart. We've seen
That's
it
right.
many times with ourselves too, from personal experience, before Christ and after Christ, and it was a big journey for us. So that's just what we've experienced that is beneficial and helpful. And effort, you're going to have to put your own effort in. You're going to have to be the masters of what you decide to put into your life. What comes in and what comes out are two totally different things, but you want them to align eventually.
So we covered a lot of ground, and thank you for being my first guest.
No,
This has been cool.
Thanks for having me. You're really handsome.
Ava's over there going.
Thanks for joining us, guys.